Welcome back to another video on the channel. This video is going to be all about the men's Grand Slam title race between Federer, Nadal and Djokovic. Before I get into the video, I think it's worth saying that I don't think the greatest of all time is necessarily the person that finishes with the most Grand Slams. I think you've got to look at things like the most Masters titles, the head-to-head records, most weeks at world number one. So I think there's a lot of different factors going into saying who is the greatest tennis player of all time, rather than just looking at the Grand Slam title results. But yeah, I am going to look at the Grand Slam title race because, as we all know by now, it took a huge swing last week with Novak Djokovic winning his 19th Grand Slam title at the French Open to close the gap to Federer and Nadal to just one. So I'm going to kick off now with Roger Federer, who was defeated yesterday in Halle by Felix Auger-Aliassime, an upset and not ideal for his Wimbledon preparations. So I've said now for a year or so that I didn't think Roger Federer would win another Grand Slam, and that's nothing against Roger Federer. I think he's been an incredible, Grand Slam champion over the years. He's the man that changed tennis. He's, transformed tennis to new heights, and probably pushed Djokovic and Nadal to new heights as well, with the records that he set. I just think with Roger, I think the competitiveness of Grand Slams now from round 3 or 4 will take its toll on Federer, and he won't be able to produce his best in the big moments in quarters and semi-finals if he was to reach in that stage. Even looking at the French Open 2021, what we've just had, you had Davidovich Fokina reaching the quarterfinals. Musetti was 2 sets to love up against Djokovic in round 4. Diego Schwartzman gave Rafa a good match in the quarters. You've got the next gen coming through, Stefanos Tsitsipas reaching a Grand Slam final for the very first time. Alexander Zverev reaching the semi-final, and then they've obviously got Nadal and Djokovic still number 1 and 2. So from round 3 and 4 onwards, it's very, very difficult. There's loads of fantastically gifted players with many different styles, all chasing the same goals. So just for Roger Federer to beat, 4 or 5 of those players, I find it very difficult to see him doing that at the age of 39. I always think to win a Grand Slam, no matter how experienced you are, how good of your player you are, you need recent winning form. You need complete confidence in your game, tournament wins, incredible fitness. And I'm just not sure that Federer has all those things rolled together to muster up an effort to win a Grand Slam. I could be completely proved wrong. Federer has proved me wrong before when he came back and won the Australian Open after a year off. But I think it would be his truly best ever Grand Slam win if he was to win the Wimbledon title, for example, this year. I will say that, and I've always said that, Wimbledon presents Roger with his best opportunity to win another Grand Slam, and he's always said since his comeback that everything he does in preparation is to win Wimbledon, which you can't really dispute. We'll see how he does at Wimbledon now. Why I say them things is because, Roger's won this title many, many times. He'll have the crowd on his side. The next gen do also like experience on grass. Nobody's played on grass for 2 years due to the pandemic last year. The whole grass court season was wiped out. But the likes of Tsitsipas and Medvedev and Thiem and Zverev have not really played on grass, especially the younger players like Sinner and Musetti. Again, very, very inexperienced on grass, whereas Roger's been there and done it. He's won this title many, many times. And also, I think what could be interesting is, the number 1 in the world and defending champion Novak Djokovic will go into this Wimbledon as a huge favourite to defend his title. But you do have to have a question whether will Djokovic be fatigued going into Wimbledon. It's just a 2 week break he's got now going into Wimbledon, and he is 35-year-old. He's had 2 very, very demanding tournaments in the Australian Open and French Open this year. So, if Djokovic does get pushed in the early stages of Wimbledon, will he be able to find his best in those big moments of quarterfinals and semi-finals? I certainly wouldn't bat against Djokovic's fitness, but it does have to be a question and something that maybe Federer can take advantage of. But yeah, it's interesting to see Federer going at this Wimbledon. I thought he looked very, very good at the French Open until he withdrew. But yesterday, watching him, it was a vastly different Roger Federer, and he looked very poor, it must be said. So, if Roger can set into rhythm early rounds and get the crowd on his side and, cause a couple of upsets perhaps, then, maybe he can win another Wimbledon and get the 21 Grand Slams. Moving on now to Rafa Nadal, and Rafa will be bitterly disappointed that he did not win the French Open and pass Roger Federer. The first opportunity that he had to reach a 21st Grand Slam title at the French, and he didn't quite get over the line. I said last year that I thought you'd win the next 2 or 3 French Opens just because of how easily you beat Djokovic in the final last year. and how easily he's won the last 2 or 3 French Opens. I think he hasn't dropped a set since, was it 2019 against Dominic Thiem in the final. That was a final he was in full control of as well. So you just never really see Rafa Nadal losing at the French. Um, could he win another French Open title? Absolutely, he could. But it's going to be getting more and more difficult. Next year we're going to have Dominic Thiem back at the French Open, hopefully in some sort of form. He entered this French Open in terrible form, Dominic Thiem. So let's hope he can have a good end to 2021 and produce some of his best on the clay courts next season. Stefanos Tsitsipas, as I said, played some outstandingly good tennis throughout the French Open. Cruised to the final almost. Until Sasha Zverev pushed him to 5 sets, and then 2 sets to live up against Novak Djokovic in the final. So, although Tsitsipas didn't win his maiden Grand Slam title, he can be incredibly proud of his performance. He'll learn so much from that tournament and the final against Djokovic, and come even harder next year to win his title there. Sasha Zverev, the name mentioned there, he's obviously reached a Grand Slam final in the past. Had a very good tournament last week until he got knocked out by Tsitsipas. And then you're going to have Djokovic looking to defend his title. So, Nadal at 36, it's going to be very tough to get back in the high horse at the French, but I'm sure he'll go there full of hell looking to get his title back at the French Open. So I think it's worth saying with Rafa that, most of his winning has been done at the French Open. He has had a few defeats now from the next gen at the Grand Slams, at the Australian Open in the US and Wimbledon. So you can never really write them off winning another US Open or another Wimbledon title, but because it's Rafa Nadal, Rafa Nadal's, one of the best tennis players to ever live. He's got an incredible fight, and when he looks down and out, he seems to come back with incredible tennis that nobody can live with. So you can never write Rafa Nadal off at any age in any form. But I would say it was unlikely for Rafa to win another French Open away from, another Grand Slam away from the French Open. I think it would be unlikely, but. As I say, you never know with Rafa. But moving on to Novak Djokovic, and he's had a huge year so far. He said at the start of the year, 2021, that he was going to start prioritising his schedule to try and win the most Grand Slams and become the most successful tennis player ever. And he's had some start of doing that. He started the year 3 behind on 17 Grand Slams to Nadal and Federer's 20. He now is just 1 behind, which is a huge momentum swing. And in years gone by, usually Djokovic has won the Australian, and then Nadal sort of opened the lead back up with the French. That's happened for the last 2 or 3 years. So for Nadal not to win the French Open was big, but for Djokovic to take it was even bigger. Nadal didn't stay 2 ahead of Djokovic, and Tsitsipas or a team win the title. For Djokovic to win it and close the gap is almost like making up 2 for Djokovic in a sense. I think Djokovic does go into Wimbledon as favoured, as defending champion. He's the best player in the world right now by some way, in my opinion. He's still beating the next gen at Grand Slams. Even from 2 sets down, the final against Tsitsipas was just a remarkable achievement. To also beat Rafa Nadal at the French Open was again such a monumental achievement for Djokovic. Something that he's wanted to do for many years. If he can do that in the semi-final and then go on to win the final from 2 sets down, must give him the world of confidence going to Wimbledon. I think the only thing that probably stops him doing that is the fatigue factor. As I say, he's only had a 2-week break before Wimbledon singles, which is a short turnaround for a 35-year-old. But if anyone can pull it off, I think Djokovic is probably the man to do it. I think it's worth noting that last week I do feel was one of his best Grand Slams wins, if not his biggest. As I said, to beat Rafa and then to pass him 2 sets down is about as big and as better as it gets. Incredible achievement from Djokovic to do that at 35-year-old and to get into 19 Grand Slams by winning the French, something that he's not been able to do in the past for a lot of years. Then it's almost a bonus Grand Slam for Djokovic. I've always said with Novak as well, his adaptability is a key factor. He can beat anybody, anywhere, at any time, and he proved that last week. So I think, in terms of predicting how many each, will finish on, I've always said I think Federer finishes on 20. His best chance probably comes at Wimbledon this year. If he doesn't win Wimbledon this year, then, I don't think Federer is definitely not going to win another Grand Slam ever again. Nadal, I could certainly see him winning another 1 or 2 French. Maybe he's won, one at the US or Wimbledon. So I'm going to say Rafa finishes on 22. And Djokovic, as I've said, I think he's the best player in the world right now. If he can maintain this level for another 2 or 3 years, his adaptability, his ability to win anywhere in the world, he's still got an edge over the next gen. He's got an edge, especially over Rafa now, away from the French Open in particular, but especially after beating Rafa at the French, then, you know, I think Djokovic finishes on 24 or 25 Grand Slams. So yeah, leave your comments in the comment section below of how many you think each will finish on, who you think the greatest player of all time is and why. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe. It is much appreciated, and I will see you on the next video.